So the particles we want to get out are monosaccharides, disaccharides, and polysaccharides, excuse the burp, in the front at the beginning of it. Happy Homebrew Wednesday, everybody. Christmas is just around the corner. This time next week, Christmas will be done, finished, gone. Anyway, cheers. Let's have a beer. It's been a long, long day. Don't know if you can see that. Oh, look at that. Yum. This is my old peculiar clone. It's brilliant. It's very, very nice. This is coming on 12 months old, this one. Oh. Anyways, what's been happening? Today I got an email from Duncan Bryant, who's an intern at American Homebrewers Association, and he said that my Pimp the System article is up online. So, brilliant. That's for Hex. Here's Hex over here. Where is he? There he is. There you go. I wanted to talk about something today. I wanted to talk about sugars when you mash, and just how they're all put together. What are the types of sugars that are in the grains, and how we get those sugars out? Obviously we're doing the mash, but you know, what is going on in there, and what are the individual steps to try and get that done? Now, a little tiny grain, if I had one, got one in my garage, a little tiny grain has got everything in it that it needs to convert into sugars, because that's what it's there for. It's a grain that's meant to grow a plant, so it's meant to convert into food and make the plant grow, and away it goes. So everything you need is in that nice little package. Problem is, that little package you've got to get everything out of. So that's why we crush grain. That breaks it up. But we haven't got the sugars out yet. Crushing grain is just like unwrapping a Christmas present at Christmas time. What you've done is you've opened it up, you can see what's in there, but all the good stuff that you want is still in a blister pack, or it's got those stupid little ties everywhere that you can't get anything undone. So as soon as we crushed it, now we can start to work and really get into that grain and start pulling it apart down into its little molecular structure. Now we want to get out the sugars that are in the grain. Now there's a whole bunch of different sugars that we want. You know, there's glucose, and there's lactose, and there's maltose, and dextrins, a whole lot. So we want all these different things, and they all do a different job. Like some of them are fermentable, and some of them aren't fermentable. Which is a drink. Got the big words I'm going to say next. I need to have a wet whistle. So sugar molecule, monosaccharide, is a single sugar molecule, and that's a glucose. Disaccharides are two of them, and that's maltose. And polysaccharides are three or more. Now these sugar molecules are in the starches. Now the starches are in the grain, and they're all wrapped up in the blister pack by proteins. So the protein is the blister pack that's holding the good stuff in. So the first thing that we've got to do is we've got to rip away that protein, but not all of it, because we want to use that protein. We want to use that protein because it's head retention and mouthfeel and stuff like that. But we want to break it up so that we can get the starches out and start working on the starches. So we do. There's a spider. It's just called a fly. That's what that buzzing is in the background. It's got his dinner. So the first thing that we do is we do a protein rest. Now a protein rest is raising the water in the mash up to 50 degrees for a certain amount of time, because at that 50 degrees there's a protease enzyme that's in the grain, and that starts to break down the protein that's holding the starches in place to loosen up the starches. Now starches are big chains, big bundles of strings of sugar molecules, all tied together with knots and branches and bits and pieces coming off all over the place. So we want to free those up so that we can start nibbling away at those and pulling them apart. So once we've started to release them from the proteins that are with a 50 degree protein rest. Now I do my protein rest by doing an underletting. So I fill up my mash tun from the bottom up with 50-degree water, and once the top of the grain bed is wet, I probably let it sit there for about 10 minutes. So that's long enough to start to break up those proteins and get those starches out, and long enough to leave some protein behind. So the next thing that we want to do is the starches need to be made softer so that we can get in there and start pulling them apart. And we do that with, what's it called? Look at my notes. We do that with gelatinization, jelly. Okay, make it mushy. And gelatinization occurs when the starches start to absorb water, and that happens between 63 and 66 degrees centigrade. So as we're heating up the water in our mash tun, we've got our starches out, and the starches are starting to get softer, and they're starting to loosen up, and all the sugars are starting, all the chains are starting to become available so that we can get in there and start nibbling at them. Now, at that stage, we're bringing it up to our first saccharification temperature, and our saccharification temperature is, well, our saccharification rest is bringing the water temperature up to a point where the beta amylase enzyme can start working on those starches to create maltose. So that's around about 60 to 65 degrees. And what it does, this little beta amylase, I think it's beta amylase, is it beta amylase? Yeah, beta amylase. This little beta amylase, my next bit of paper already. This little bit of beta amylase, it goes along and finds a chain of sugars, and it attaches to 3 individual sugar molecules, and then chops off 2 of them, and it creates a maltose. That's all it does. It just sits there and floats around, finds them, but it can only do it if there's more than 3 sugar molecules in a row. So as soon as it gets to just 3, and it's at a junction or something like that, it stops. So it's pretty discriminant about what it does. I've got a certain job, I'm going to latch on to 3 molecules and chop off, leave 2 behind, make maltose. I'll do that. And it does it at that temperature. So when I do a mash, I normally mash around 63 degrees, and I let my mash saccharification rest at 63 degrees for about 90 minutes. That gives heaps of time for that beta amylase to go shooting around, chopping off, making maltose, because maltose is our fermentable sugar that's going to give us our high gravity. Now there's another enzyme that's in there, and that's alpha amylase, and that one doesn't give a shit where it chops off bits. Okay, it just goes chomp, 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 chomp on the chains that are left over. So that one starts to work when we increase our temperatures around the 72, 75 degree mark. So as we're ramping up our temperature, we've still got some beta amylase working here, and then we've got some alpha amylase working, and they're starting to help each other out. Like this one's going to come along and chop a chain off and chop links that this one couldn't get at, and this one's going to come and nibble them up. So they start to work together. But the alpha amylase makes a lot of individual sugar molecules, and they're glucose. And it also makes a lot of odd-shaped sugar molecules, and those are, dextrins, and lactoses and stuff like that. And those are the things that that change the taste of a beer. So the next sort of step that we do, so we've had, what have we had? 90 minutes at around 63 degrees, and then we've ramped up the temperature up to about 70 degrees to activate the other enzyme. The beta amylase is starting to die down. When we mash out, we normally ramp up that temperature a little bit more to 75 degrees, and we do that to stop the activity of the beta amylase, so that we can control the sweetness of the beer and have a lot more lactose and dextrin created, the non-fermentable sugars. So anyway, as an example of the different beers, if we've got a low alcohol beer or a light beer, normally low alcohol beers taste funny, they have a sweeter taste to them, because when they're mashed, the beta amylase is cut off really early, so there's not as much fermentable sugars, and the alpha amylase is left to do more work, so they use a higher temperature in their mash. So that produces more lactose, so that you get a sweeter beer because the lactose doesn't get fermented. On the other hand, when you do a really long mash at 63 degrees, you're converting lots and lots of those starches into maltose sugars, which have got a high fermentation, and you don't leave behind a lot of glucose and lactose for it to, create that sweetness. So you end up with a really high finished gravity, but it's a really dry beer. So as you play around with these little bits and pieces, and you bring out your times at your different temperatures, you'll notice a totally different taste. You'll notice different flavour aspects coming through, because of course the more sugars, it changes the way that the flavour is. So it's worthwhile doing it in little tiny batches and playing around with those temperatures. Pick the same grain, do a smash beer, do lots and lots of smash beers. Just use the same grain over and over again, and just increase the temperature and reduce the time, or increase the time and reduce the temperature, or have different step infusions and saccharification times, just to see what it does to that beer. Anyway, I hope that was helpful. It's a lot of things to try and remember about how it chops up in bits and pieces like that. It's chemistry. I was never any good at chemistry at school. But basically, we want to make sugars, or fermentable sugars, and some sugars to make the beer taste good. So hopefully it's been helpful, and if anybody's got any further comments about it, chuck in a video response to it, or chuck in some comments down the bottom, and let's see how we get going on sugar mashing 101. But yeah, anyway, happy Christmas everybody. Have a safe. Wait, hey buddy.
I checked and there was 3 eggs.
There's 3 eggs in with the chickens?
Yeah.
Okay, do you want to get the eggs out, mate?
I did.
Oh, did you? Oh, cool.
They're on the trampoline.
Okay.
And where are all the chickens?
Oh, they're racing off there in the garden somewhere.
No, they're in there.
Okay, you go round up the chickens. Go round them up, boy.
And just try and get them out there.
Okay.
With a stick.
With a stick. Poor chickens. Okay, anyway, I've got to go save the chickens. Happy Homebrew Wednesday. Have a great Christmas. Drink responsibly. Be the one, mate. Anyway, have another one. Cheers.
I'm going to check every day.
You're going to check every day for the eggs. Good lad.
Yeah.
Poor chickens. Cheers. Merry Christmas.